أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another program of our Soulful Dialogue. This afternoon, it's good seeing familiar faces. Inshallah, every month we have a special program that we put together for the community. Today with us, we have another special guest with us who we've been trying to secure for a couple of months, but due to her busy schedule, we were able to have her join us here today, just because the matter of today's topic is just so important, right? Today's topic is going to be on how to navigate divorce, separation, and single parenthood in the community or in America in general. For that, today we have with us Sister KHALEDA ESHANZADA, who is a licensed clinical social worker. She is the founder and head of her private practice and Beyond Margins Training and Consulting, a firm dedicated to delivering specialized training and consulting services. Sister KHALEDA's background includes serving as a crisis intervention trainer for law enforcement agencies and as a forensics clinical therapist at the Roberts Presley Detention Center. With her passion for mental health advocacy, Sister KHALEDA has worked with the NAMI, where she facilitates stigma reduction classes tailored to the Muslim community, aiming to ensure access to services and eliminate barriers. She has also contributed her expertise to the nonprofit media company, reporting on the unique challenges faced by the Muslim community in America. Currently, she is pursuing her doctoral degree in social work at the University of Southern California, USC, to enhance her expertise further and broaden her impact in the field of social work. She's currently and continues to serve as an adjunct professor at the California State University, San Bernardino, where she teaches social work. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having us. Like a long bio.
So just wanted to, first and foremost, wanted to thank you for being here with us, and also anything that you like to add on to it, anything about yourself, so the community is aware of the work you are doing.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here. Alhamdulillah. As far as work is concerned, I have my private practice. Hold up. Okay. And there's not much that I wanted to add on. I got into this profession. I don't know if there's a saying out in the world that social work, the profession of social work picks you, you don't pick it. And it came from my desire to understand myself better, going through navigating single parenthood and divorce in the community. I wanted to learn more about my children's psyche in my own, understand my own environment a little bit better. That's why I picked this field to continue, my journey and to kind of understand what's going on around me.
Thank you for sharing that. Now let's kind of get to the topic. I know, today's topic is one that usually most often is never talked about, but in the community, in the Muslim community, we are always getting and having couples come to us because there's always something that is needed for the couples, right? Either it's working with the couples and making sure that they are effectively utilizing communication better. It's either trying to talk to them about where, and figuring out where the pitfalls have been in the relationship throughout the years, which they haven't been able to master, right? Which over time, kind of what happens, couples will separate, even though the road is there, right? They want to reach the same goal, but sometimes, with, different challenges that come along the way, which Sister KHALEDA will share, and myself, but eventually partners, they just separate. Now, before we get to this, something that I usually do in therapy. So when I have couples come to me, I give them three options very clearly right when they come. I say, there's three options in front of you before I bring you for an on-site of therapy. Number one is both partners are coming here with good intention, right? Good intention. that you are both here to give your 100% into therapy when you're coming here. You're not here for your partner, and you're not here to be here for your partner so your partner changes. You're here for yourself and the changes you can make for your relationship. Remember, you're here for your relationship. That's one. And I say, you know, we'll now get ready. You know, I'm here to provide you tools, skills that will help the both of you, inshallah, succeed in your marriage and how you can become masters of your relationship, not disaster of your relationship. That's one. The second is, you know, the second path and the second option I usually give them is couples, most often they live in the same household, but they live as roommates, right? And, you know, they live in separate rooms. They really don't communicate well with one another. Children are there. They're witnessing what's happening in the household. So my second option is usually, well, let's talk about how can you both live in the same household in a respectful manner, because let's say you have children in common, you have, you know, societal pressure, you have assets, you have properties, you know, all of those things take a lot of, it puts a lot of pressure on an individual. And then thirdly, which leads to healthy separation. There's times where no matter what you do, how much effort you put into working with couples, how much effort they put into, you know, putting effort into their relationship or none at all, you know, either one partner or both partners just, you know, go into their own different paths and they choose a different path, and that's healthy separation. Now, coming to the question, I know I kind of went on this because it's an important topic, and this is something I always see in the community amongst couples. Can you tell us what is kind of the leading cause of divorce in our community, or, you know, in America that we're seeing?
Well, the leading cause of divorce is not, there's multitude, right? Every situation is going to be unique, but the most common one is lack of communication, like you mentioned, right? People not communicating sufficiently, like enough with one another, telling them how they feel or what's going on in their mind and what their expectations are is another one. Not having the same having different expectations of one another, not understanding where the other person's coming. And to be honest with you, in our community, what I have seen is that we forgot our roles, right? We forgot what a woman's role is, and a man forgot what his role is. And this is when things break down in a marriage, when a woman wants to kind of take charge, which is fine to a certain degree, but at the end of the day, you know, how was the system, a marriage was built in an Islamic tradition, is not there, then it's not going to go anywhere. Another big one is financial issues. Actually, it is one of the leading causes of divorce in general public and within Muslim community or non-Muslim community is financial issues. Expectations, what do I want? The competition of the next door neighbor, what they have and what you cannot afford to give me. Those are all leading cause of divorce in our community. But again, I would say I think the most important one is that we forgot our roles because we're trying to be somebody that we're not. Social media plays a huge role in it as well. What you see in Instagram and or Facebook, you connect with old people, and there's like so much that could go wrong with the misuse of social media that leads to divorce. And that's actually one of the one of the reasons that just kind of did it for me as well. It was the use of social media.
I wanted to touch base on two things that you just indicated, very important ones too. Number one is, if you can go a little bit more into financials, what do you mean by that? And then second, the roles, you know, if you can talk more about that.
Sure. Financially, you know, we stopped living within our means, right? We have stopped living with our means. We want certain things, like girls. You know, like even couples come in for marital counseling. And they want this, they want a 5-carat ring, they want this massive wedding with so much, you know, whatever, like Instagram perfect, as they call it, right? And I asked them, like, do you want a wedding or do you want a marriage? There's a difference between the two. If you want a marriage, then let's talk. If he could afford it, fantastic. If not, then let's not go there. Let's not start at a negative. And then another part of it is that we have, that we don't live by the 50-50 rule, right? You pay 50% and I pay 50%. Sometimes they have to. Sometimes both husband and wife have to go to work, and that's okay. But they have to come to that agreement. You can't also have that expectation. My wife works and pays 50%, but then when she comes home, then she's going to be a wife and do 100% of the household chores and take care of the kids. If we're going to do 50-50, then we also going to split the 50-50 work at home. It's like pick a lane and stick to it. We want to tell the brothers, right? You can't have your cake and eat it too. That's one. And then as far as the roles, it kind of interplays with the two. The roles are that, if you want your wife to be like, traditional, then all right, then you want to be the breadwinner. But if you want your wife to work, then fantastic. That's also kind of like, but even if the woman chooses to work outside, I want to remind the sisters too, is that also the man, we have to understand the man is the imam of the house. Period. End of discussion. We have to go back to our traditions, not what our non-Muslim friends are doing. Like, oh, he can't go anywhere if I don't ask him. If like that macho-ness that I have it wrapped around my. It doesn't suit who we are. It doesn't mesh with our principles. So that's what I mean. Even men, the chivalry is gone for the newer generation. They really don't understand how to properly ask for somebody's hand. There's so many qualified, beautiful young sisters who can't find a matching partner because men are not up to par with women in our community. I hate to say it. If you see in our community, there's more eligible women out there than there are men. That's a problem. That's a huge problem. We don't have the same expectations that we do from our we do from our daughters that we have from our sons. That's a huge problem.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that's something we constantly see and something personally experienced too, right? I know myself growing up here in America, since I was age of 9, and growing up in a society that kind of drives you to be more productive, regardless if you're a male or a female. You have to chase the American dream. You have to go out and chase, have ambition and have, for instance, the home. You got to have the car. And a lot of those things, I over time, even myself personally, came to understand, either through seeing couples come to us and kind of struggling. Number one, like you said, 2 things. Communication is a big factor, and finances. That's big, right? Because that can lead an individual or in a couple in a state where most often one partner just can't trust, the other partner, no matter what happens. And a lot of that responsibility actually lies on us as men, the husbands. We have to be the ones to be able to provide financially. And something, unfortunately, this is what I see in couples work. I know in our society, it's difficult to thrive and to, meet expectations on a day-to-day. Things are, inflation has increased. But at the same time, when couples come, I always, which is very unfortunate, but I always see most often brothers, not always, times brothers, where they always say in sessions to their wives that my money is my money. Now that's a problem. Mm-hmm. It's both of your money. Her money is her money. And that's where things become very tricky and challenging. Mm-hmm. At the same time, there's also unrealistic expectations from sisters too, that I've seen, that they also demand a lot of things from the husband. And, there's times where I've been in sessions where a wife wants a maid to come and clean and cook, doesn't want to work, doesn't want to do home chores, but also doesn't want to go out and work outside. Mm-hmm. And that's also becomes problematic because we kind of look at our society and what's out there through via social media, things that really harm the relationship. But aside from that, in relationships, there's also other factors, brothers and sisters, that really affect the marriage and cause more challenges that we see amongst couples. What we always go by the 4 A's. Abandonment, either one partner usually abandons the other partner, something we constantly see. The second A is abuse. There's always abuse in relationships that lead to divorce. 3 is affairs. And then 4 is addiction. That's the 4th one. Those are also top factors that actually make one person in the relationship leave the relationship most often. Now, I wanted to ask you this, Sister Khaleda, how does it affect an individual psychologically, especially, let's say, when 2 couples or one person decides to leave the relationship? Now, how much of an effect psychologically does that have on an individual or on their kids most often as well?
I mean, the impact, psychological impact is immense. And I, do some self-disclosure here, and I will speak with you not from a capacity of a therapist, right? I'll talk to you from somebody with a lived experience now, as a parent and as a single parent, right? As somebody who went through the 4 A's that you just mentioned. It's devastating. It feels like a free fall that doesn't have an end. You just keep falling. And it gets to the point that you forget about your own pain. Like, what just happened to me? You're just trying to gather your thoughts, and you're trying to gather, mourn a loss, right? You imagine mourning a loss, because divorce is like a death, right? And it's a death to you, and it's a death of a relationship you just had, and all the ideas and hopes that you had of your own future that just dies. And nobody really grasps it, because it's easy when somebody does pass away. You pray a janazah, and then you go and bury the person, and it's done, and then you could go ahead and tell your children, well, Allah's will, that is Allah's will. But when the other parent is alive and you bury everything else about them except the body, I don't know, it's so hard to explain that to the kids, that your father wakes up every morning, chooses not to have a relationship with you. It's not Allah's will. It's not like he passed away. It's just he chooses not to. So that psychological impact, it is like an immense guilt that you feel like, how did I put myself in this position and then pick that person? Obviously, you didn't do it on purpose, right? You don't pick, I can't wait to be a single parent. Nobody does that going to a marriage. But the guilt that you feel for your own children. And then now my daughters are older. They're adults now, alhamdulillah. Now they tell me, Mom, there was times that I would sleep, cry myself to sleep, and then it breaks my heart. I'm like, why didn't you ever tell me? She's like, I don't want to make you feel bad. They also protecting me at a young age. They were 5 and 8 at that time. They were also trying to protect me, but they were trying to soothe each other in their own special childlike way. So the psychological impact in my oldest one, she felt a little bit more than the little one because she was too young. It's the self-esteem, the sense of abandonment that you mentioned, right? That has a long-term effect on their self-esteem and who they are and how they recognize themselves, right? And even at the teenage years, when they're a teenager, self-esteem becomes, and peer relationship becomes a huge thing. But then they kind of go back to that, well, if my own dad could do this, right? Then speaking of trust issue, why would I trust anything else that goes on around me?
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And that's very important. Somebody who has lived experience can definitely, shed light on how it is on the other side of the single life again, or being a single parent. But at the same time, what are some difficult decisions would you say an individual makes or a parent make when they become, when they're single parents?
There's so many. Every decision becomes like kind of like you have to sit and think about it 15 different ways to make sure that you're also protecting your children. I mean, the decisions are obviously you would want co-parenting, right? That's something big. I would love to have that opportunity to co-parent and for them to not feel the devastation that they felt like. But sometimes that's not an option. Sometimes that's not an option at all, whether it's because of the circumstances of that person or location or whatever that may be. How much do you allow the toxicity back? Right? Where do you draw the boundaries so you're protecting your child from the other parent? And it's kind of like, they think of it as, it's always seen as like, oh, she's an evil woman. She just doesn't want me to see my kids. Like, no. Like, where's the consistency, right? As a parent, you want consistency for your children. If it's not consistent, then you see the aftermath of just coming in and then leaving again, and then coming in and leaving again.
And can you explain to our brothers and sisters what is co-parenting, especially for those that might not know that? And is it an easy thing or is it a difficult thing to do when you're co-parenting your children?
Well, it depends on the person. So it all depends. Everything just depends on the person.
Can you tell us what co-parenting?
Co-parenting is like where you are separated or divorced, but you're still involved in your children's life, despite the other parent. Like co-parenting could look like, I have every week, I have this weekend, you have the following weekend, I have Eid 1, you have Eid 2. That's co-parenting. When you're both making decisions about school, about health, about how they are raised, what type of life you want to give them. So you make those vital decisions together, even if you're divorced or separated. Is it difficult or easy? I never experienced co-parenting. I raised them by myself, but there are successful people who have co-parented. But we have to put it's difficult. There's so much emotion that goes on in divorce that it's so difficult to co-parent. For a lot, because there's so much hurt that they never addressed it anywhere. So they carry it on, and every interaction, every child drop off, there's like that rage that comes from one side or the other, or both sides sometimes. So if we, even like you said, healthy separation, that's like one of the most important things. If a couple decides to separate for whatever reason, good reason, bad reason, it doesn't even matter. It has to be done in a healthy manner. And making sure that the child, because the courts in America too, they look at the well-being of the children. They don't care about anybody's emotion. Like, how is the child being taken care of? That's how they're gonna have a ruling. So again, it's hard to answer because it depends on the other person.
Thank you for sharing that. And I know your case is a little different where you are the single parent and more involved in your kid's life. If you can answer this, right, on behalf of your kids, how was it for them? I know this is a tough and a loaded question, but how was it for them, in a scenario where, they're, mainly with you, as you said, you're the one who raised them mostly. So how was that basically, if you can share that?
I know it was tough. I think it was really hard on them. Now like I said, as they're adults now, as they grow and they're able to speak a little bit more, it's still painful for them. It's not easy. It doesn't get easy. Both of my girls, they were in soccer at one point, and my younger one played for extended amount of time all the way through high school. And she wanted her dad to be there at the sideline cheering her on, and she wanted that. So she missed out on that. She would express her pain about it. Recently, we went to one of her friend's graduation party, and her friend and her father were dancing, and they're both getting teary-eyed. They still miss out on those milestones. They still miss out. There's from a developmental stage, right? Like every child goes through different phases of life, and especially girls or boys, really, they want both parents to see that, experience that, and be proud of them. and say, honey, I'm proud of you. Good job. So it was painful. Like, if I could sum it up, it is still like difficult. I think now they have let go. I don't think they could let go of the pain. They've let go of the anger, but now they're just kind of like accepting to a certain degree until a milestone comes out, and then they feel the impact of it again.
Yeah, no, that's very tough and very hard. And again, mashallah, power to you, for being that strong parent, mother for your daughter. Usually for girls, they do look up to their fathers most often, because the first man in their life is the father most often. I know it is for me. For my daughter, I'm the first guy that's there for her. And it allows them to learn, how they view life, how they view men, how they learn to appreciate like the most smallest things that, how they should be treated as women. Vice versa, same thing with men. The closest people that we men are also to our mothers. The first person that, that we're closest to is our mothers. That's why it's so important. There's times, just like Sister Khaleda stated, there's times in our lives, even in Islam, it has indicated that sometimes marriages don't work out. But it's very important to be involved in your child's life, because they, at the end of the day, will always need you. Will always need you no matter what happens. Now, I wanted to ask you, Sister Khaleda, what are some of the challenges experienced, or what are some of the challenges even you have experienced as a single parent, through family, through community pressures? Were there anything like that in the beginning or even now, if you can share those with us?
Well, the challenges are many, right? Personal challenges is always the financial challenges. You're going from a 2-income household to one. Time management, work-life balance. That's why it's so important for family to be supportive, right? To have a community to lean on. And, alhamdulillah, initially when it was too much for me to take of the 4 A's for a decade, when I wanted to take off, obviously my parents were against it. My family's like, no, we want to make sure that the girls are taken care of and all that good stuff. And this was a while back, right? 15 years ago. We didn't have much. I remember in this very masjid, Sheikh Fakhi gave a lecture about divorce and in single parenthood. And I literally text him Jazakallah khair for talking about this, because back in the days, 15 years ago, we didn't talk about divorce ever. We didn't. In fact, every conference that I would go to, now, we have this notion that this doesn't exist in our community. Even some of the imams, they're like, yeah, the tide is shifting, but let's just not talk about it. I remember going to one conference and they were talking about parenthood and a family life and all that. And it was a panel discussion. And one of the prominent community members was talking about how it's important for mothers to be involved in PTA, right? In the kids' school, be more involved in the kids' school. So next to me was me and 3 other divorced single parents. And I don't even call myself single parent. I call myself a solo parent. And we're looking at each other like, this is so irrelevant to us, right? In this little corner, it's irrelevant. Well, that's fantastic. We can't continuously paint this picture of perfection like a guidance residential commercial. That's not how it is. And I remember talking to the moderator of that. I'm like, can we talk about real stuff a little bit? That when we're talking about family, let's not neglect the others. And it's like, you could create an organization, would love to support you. It's like, that's right. As a solo parent with work and raising kids, I'm going to create some type of a single women organization. This is the only way that our community is going to be open and accepted and talk about it. It was ludicrous, really. We didn't have much, but alhamdulillah, it's obvious, but it's still not where we need to be. We have a lot of work to be done.
Absolutely. And I see kind of sometimes the challenges that comes with it. I actually have a couple, like, I know a person, who is, a brother, who has also separated, years ago. And which is kind of sad to see at times. What I experience with him is whenever we have family gatherings or when we invite him over, because, has become part of, the family as a community member. We bring them, we ask him to come over. There's always like family gatherings. And then at those times, unfortunately, always, he himself doesn't feel comfortable being in those settings because, you're going there by yourself. How has that been on your end?
Initially it was tough. Everybody wants to know what happened. I thought he was such a great guy. They have their own 2 cents into it. And, it feels like people come and ask you as if you owe them an explanation. It's like, I don't owe you an explanation on what happened in my life. The only people I owe an explanation to are my 2 daughters. And I'm giving them in increments because they're too young, right? Like, well, let's not pry on what happened. If they don't want to share, they don't want to share. So I said, you know what? You're not going to leave me alone, especially this one sister was insisting on knowing what happened. So I'm like, let me tell you. So we're done and you could go on to your next victim, right? It was not initially, it was just kind of a lot of whispering. Oh, there she is. Oh my gosh. Do you think she's going to be with somebody else next? Do you think she's going to, what about the kids? How are the kids doing? It's like this was, if we're concerned, then provide a support, right? Provide the support. Let's not do the whole, because we see it. I see it, and I'm sure this brother sees it too, right? It's just like he feels awkward because it's the looks that he probably, even if they don't mean it, so we already all self-conscious about the decision to, like a life-changing decision we made. It's a lot. It's a lot to kind of walk into a family thing because you feel inadequate at a lot of times, right? Like, where did I go wrong? What's wrong with me that I couldn't hold on to that marriage? No matter how obvious the sign is that you need to leave this marriage, you still feel like a failure. You failed in that part of your life. So that's a lot to swallow. So that's the biggest thing that I think the community, I feel like families and communities need to be a little bit more open and understanding about.
Thank you for that. And now wanted to kind of change and shift the discussion just slightly before we get to Q&A. How does one learn to prioritize oneself? And how do you kind of, I would say, rebuild yourself? Because right now, when two people are together, everything is, joint, and, it either be finances, it's, assets, children, same aspiration, same dreams, right? Most often, the wives, instilling their trust in their husband so they can lead and make sure the family's safe and things are provided to them. But once there's that separation, how does one, maybe asking you, right, as a single parent, but also from a single mother's perspective, how do you navigate that?
How do you rebuild yourself? First of all, there's a lot of tawakkul. There's a lot of prayers. There's a lot of trusting, trusting my creator that he got me. I remember when I first made the decision to separate, I was so petrified. I was so scared. Like, how am I going to raise 2 daughters in America by myself? Like, alhamdulillah, I had my brothers and my sister. I had my parents who were there. But at the end of the day, it's the good, bad, and the ugly I'm responsible for. Now I'm responsible. It's mine to carry. And I remember one sheikh told me, he's just like, but you have to remember that you're not raising them alone. Allah's with you. And that just brought so much comfort. So I first started building myself as I started reading the Quran more. And I know it sounds cliche, making dua and all that stuff, but really, I was in a deep depression, and going to a therapy at that time was taboo. They're like, well, you're not crazy, you're just divorced. Like, right, but I have nowhere to process my feelings. So it really, rereading the Quran over and over again, it helped. We have to build from inside, right? The finances, it's gonna be a long road ahead. But having that tawakkul that Allah takes care of you, that's number one. Number two is daily self-care. What I would do is like I would start building a routine for my children and I, like a new norm between them and I. Like Friday afternoon tradition after school, we would go to the movies, or we go to Disneyland, we will go have lunch, go to the mall. We have to start rebuilding, like finding joy in having that gratitude for, because it could always be worse. It could always be worse. And I always have to remind myself it could be worse, and it's not. Alhamdulillah, he could fight me for the kids, and my kids could be half the time on the East Coast, and I'll be devastated. So building again, it gets you so much closer to Allah, like holding on to His rope. That's how I was able to build myself.
Thank you for sharing that. These are very helpful, a very important discussion, an important topic as well. Now I would like to open this, the floor for Q&A. If anybody has any questions that they would like to ask Sister Khaleda, the floor is yours. So please don't be shy. I always have to say this. Inshallah, we can conclude. Again, thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed the topic and the discussion. So thank you for coming out and for visiting our and my community. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah khair, everybody. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.